Today we're going to look at another sensitive problem where most people think that it can never happen to them, but they'd be wrong, and you don't even have to look beyond the official narrative because the U.S. Department of State has published a fact sheet to expose the problem. Every year, thousands of people across the world fall victim to a crime that's as horrifying as it is hidden: human organ trafficking. Illegal organ harvesting generates $1.7 billion globally each year on the black market, where the most vulnerable are exploited, violated, and left permanently scarred, if they survive at all. This isn't something that happens only in far-off places. It happens in cities, hospitals, borders, and back alleys. And in many cases, victims don't even realize what's been done to them until it's too late. Organ harvesting is the illegal removal of organs, most often kidneys, livers, and corneas, from a living or recently deceased individual. Sometimes it's done under false pretenses. Other times it's done through force, coercion, or outright abduction. It's the topic of trafficking people to be used as organ donors, either voluntarily or involuntarily. And don't think for 1 second that there aren't a whole bunch of different ways that these monsters do it. I suspect that you are going to see more and more of this as we begin to move into the deeper and darker layers of disclosure. Most states have a place that you can sign up as a donor through your driver license. Personally, I've been an organ donor since I was 16 years old, and I'm about to remove it from my driver's license. Let me tell you why. Recently, it has come out in the news that there's been numerous cases of organs harvested from a living people that haven't been pronounced dead or show signs of life. Let's look at some numbers. There's a federal investigation into the NGO named Kentucky Organ Donor Affiliates, or CODA, for potentially inducing hospital employees towards organ harvesting, in spite of a patient showing signs of life. There's a case, and you can find it linked in the description, where a patient actually opened his eyes before he went into surgery, but was still taken in for harvesting. 45 minutes later, the family learned that their loved one woke up and began thrashing around, but CODA wanted them to continue the donation. The doctor refused, and 2 former CODA employees, Natasha Miller and Nicoletta Martin, claim that CODA leadership pressured the staff to proceed despite his signs of life, and even attempted to recruit another surgeon who would be willing to continue. So the first question is, who is this Kentucky Organ Donor Affiliates that they have any say over organ procedures? CODA is a non-profit organ procurement organization, one of 55 in the United States. This is going to become important to remember. They are an NGO, and DOJ found so many of the NGOs stealing taxpayer money. Second, remember that they procure or obtain these precious commodities. The question to keep in mind is where and how do they get these organs? CODA is supposed to facilitate organ and tissue donation only after a patient has been declared dead. It coordinates the logistics, communicates with the families, and partners with hospitals and the organ procurement and transplantation network, but is not supposed to provide or perform medical care itself, nor declare death. The findings are a result of a Health Resources and Services Administration investigation into Network for Hope, which showed that hospital employees were pressured to proceed with organ donation procedures despite obvious signs of life. Also, families were pressured to proceed with organ donations for their loved ones. Some didn't recognize the effects of sedation, which sometimes masked the alertness of the patient. During the investigation, 1/3 of the organ donations were flagged as concerning. Investigators concluded that 73 procedures out of 350 cases of canceled organ donation procedures should have been stopped sooner. That's a little scary. Over 20%. Vulnerabilities were highest in smaller and rural hospitals. After a thorough investigation, the Health Resources and Services Administration revealed clear negligence after the previous OPTN, or Organ Procurement and Transplantation Network, board of directors claimed that they found no major concerns in their internal review. Under the Biden administration, the OPTN's Membership and Professional Standards Committee closed the same case without action. On July 21st, Robert Kennedy Jr. threatened to close the deficient, federally funded organ procurement program if they didn't report data about any safety-related stoppages of organ donation to regulators, and the OPTN must update policies to strengthen organ procurement safety and provide accurate, complete information about the donation process to families and hospitals. So let's look a little deeper at the not-so-federally monitored facilities. Let's look into the underground organ harvesting trade and see if it's somehow connected or spills over into our NGOs and hospitals. Organ harvesting has ended up with people awakening in hospitals under the knife to take out their organs, but at least they are in a hospital. There's a true-life story of someone that came from my husband's hometown in Canada. If you search the media, you will find lots of fact checks that say that organ abductions don't occur, but this absolutely occurred to a Canadian who went on vacation in Las Vegas. He met a woman that was a prostitute, became physical with her, and the next thing he knew was that he woke up in his hotel room in a bathtub full of ice, and he had fresh wounds from having organs removed from his body. This is not an isolated case. When you engage in prostitution or spend time with anybody that you don't know, you could wind up in trouble. He called 911 and recuperated, but he had been drugged, robbed, and his kidney had been removed, even though the media has called this practice an urban legend. You might say that this sounds crazy, but there are trafficker interviews explaining how they have doctors on staff, and it's quite organized by facilities to match blood, find donors, and conduct the surgeries. The human trafficking trade uses human beings for all kinds of unspeakable acts. They sell, rent, and violate victims in every way possible. If you saw the movie, The Sound of Freedom, you got a glimpse into the problem, but the fact is that these children who are trafficked sometimes spend their whole life being abused by adults until they're spent, and they literally can no longer provide income for their traffickers. So, in their final service to the cabal, these victims are often sold for their organs, and their lives are snuffed out from underneath of them, never having an opportunity to live the life that you and I have been afforded. But one area that we didn't consider is the border between Mexico and the United States, where many live in poverty, trying to get into the United States, and just over the border are people with money that want their organs. Kidneys are the most common, and doctors gets paid $30,000 to $40,000 for a kidney, $60,000 to $70,000 for a liver, and a whopping $100,000 to $100,000 for a heart. However, prices vary based on difficulty and demand. Depending on the organization, there could be scouts out on the street preying on poor people to sell their organs. Apparently, it's a pretty smooth running machine where customers are recruited, often in dialysis centers. They are blood typed, and the scout goes to the streets looking for a donor. If they can't find one, they will kidnap and kill one with a compatible blood type. Victims are often drugged, trafficked, or manipulated. Many are poor, illegally in the country, or desperate for work. Traffickers prey on these vulnerabilities, offering fake jobs, phony medical procedures, or staged emergencies to lure people in. But as noted, this crime doesn't just require criminals. It requires corrupt doctors, forged paperwork, and desperate buyers. Some black market operations function like organized businesses, with logistics, transportation, and even counterfeit lab reports to pass off illegal organs as legal donations. This made me wonder where the Organ Procurement and Transplantation Network got their organs, and do we even know if a donor was truly a willing donor? Does the network even care? Is this just a financial cash cow to line the pockets of the wealthy? I'm sure that ultimately it is, but the challenge is getting to the top. Lastly, we are going to talk about transplant tourism, with the top 3 countries being China, India, and Pakistan. In some places, a kidney sells for as little as $1,000. Pakistan has their own task force now, and they've shut down 11 illegal trafficking operations so far. The task force has actually gotten tips and go to locations and stop the surgery. The gangs usually move patients immediately after surgery to avoid being caught. Here's the rub: this task force says that only about 5% of the surgeries are successful. The rest are botched, so a bargain is not always a bargain. There are many cases of patients surviving the surgery but dying from organ rejection due to poor matching of donors and recipients. Even National Geographic did a documentary on the problem, revealing that in the United States, 17 people die waiting for an organ every day. It usually takes about 7 years to get a kidney, and that's about how long dialysis can hold you. The mortality rate of people waiting for organs in the United States is more than 50% because we don't have enough organs. Then there are gangs down in Colombia who take organs from victims in exchange for safe passage to the United States on what they call go boats. An organ like a kidney must come from someone who is either alive or just died, and it must be transplanted within 36 hours, preferably even sooner, and they go both north and into South America. The cartels promise people safe passage on certain roads to get the organs in and out of the country, and in some villages, 80% of the locals have sold organs. They say it's the only way to survive, and some parents have sold their children's organs as well. It looks like the problem is being looked at with RFK Jr.'s investigation and Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene's investigation into the black market of baby organ harvesting. The problem is very real, guys, and it's a huge worldwide network that will take the cooperation of leaders worldwide to shut it down. So, here's some tips for you guys to stay safe. Never accept medical exams or treatment from unlicensed or unknown clinics, especially while traveling abroad. Avoid responding to vague job offers that require travel unless your professional qualifications warrant it, especially if expenses are paid up front. Be cautious about sharing personal health data with unverified recruiters or agencies. If you or someone you know wakes up disoriented, missing time, or with unexplained scars, seek immediate medical attention and report it. Remember, this crime thrives in silence. Education and awareness are our first lines of defense. Organ trafficking is a global human rights crisis, and the only way to stop it is to expose it, speak up, and protect one another. Don't be silent. Don't be a victim. Know the signs. Share the truth.